welcome to Care Smarts 360 on Air, home care podcast. I am Dennis Gill, Senior Sales Consultant at Care Smarts. So today we are thrilled to announce a guest, Hoss, dynamic executive business coach and Tony Robbins Certified Strategist with a passion for unlocking potential. With 17 years of frontline leadership as a senior corporate healthcare executive, Haas not only managed operations across 10 long-term care homes in Ontario, but he also steered a team of 9 executives, 100 plus directors, and around 3,000 dedicated frontline heroes. So, a Bachelor of Science in Microbiology and a Master of Business set the stage for his transformative journey. As a globe-trotting entrepreneur owning ventures on 3 continents, holding a US patent with 11 claims, and creating groundbreaking programs like Zen Team Building, Hidden Potential, and Passion Discovery. Haas is uniquely equipped to explore the neuroscience of decision making in long term care leadership. Strap in for a delightful dive into decision science and leadership dynamics that will spark your imagination. Get ready to challenge your brain and transform your leadership outlook today. Welcome to the podcast, House.
I appreciate it, Dennis. It's great to be here. I appreciate that introduction.
Oh, no, we are really glad you were able to take out the time today for our meeting, and it would be really helpful, a great insight for our listeners today, and they'll be able to learn about this very important topic where most of the listeners are not aware about it. Okay. All right, so I'll straight away jump on with the first question for you. So, Has, can you share some insights on how brain science can help leaders balance intuition and analytical thinking in high stress home care environments?
That's a loaded question, but I respond to the best of my ability to say the fact that when we are aware of our value hierarchy, then we don't simply react to scenarios. We reflect before we respond, and these two are very distinguished when it comes to decision making process for high stress environment, especially healthcare, because again, it's a life and death scenario kind of thing. So, we have a chance to work with high decision makers and executives in many different domains, but specifically in healthcare, because that's my background. But that's exactly what it comes down to. So knowing the fact that, we perceive reality through a story. That's like the neuroscience of human psyche. But what is a story? Story is a description of value hierarchy that structures perception. That's the story that becomes the lens that we experience life through it as our truth. That's why we don't experience life. We experience life that we focus on.
Yep.
So knowing just this piece itself, that we're not really seeing the 3-dimensional reality as one reality, is a different reality through each people's lenses and stories. It would enable us to think more from our own value hierarchy. So what I'm saying is that when it comes to intuition versus analytical mind, if we are aware of our value hierarchy, there are a lot of great assessments out there. We help our executives with their assessments as well, but we show them like what are their value hierarchy. Then you would know when there was a scenario that brought your attention that needs what they call immediate decision. You know how you are responding. Is it reacting or reflecting and then basically responding to scenario accordingly? For example, that could be a patient origin abuse. It could be a staff negligent or so on and so forth. Or it could be a financial abuse through the corporation. So there are many different sensitive scenarios that, it might trigger some of your, I would say, personal values that could be a little bit more react. Like, for example, in neuroscience, there's a term that in my book, I talk about it. I wrote a book, it's called The Journey of Consciousness. The subtitle is The Path of Least Resistance to Ego Dissolution. We dive deep into basically, human perception. So in last 10 years or so, I've been studying neuroscience of perception. So that's basically the focus of the book and how we can be aware of it to tap into that ego dissolution, which is the ultimate level of awareness in form of being intuitive decision maker, if that makes sense. So that's
Yep.
exactly what I mean by that. So what I mean by that is that when we are talking about that, knee-jerk reaction, that's
Mm-hmm.
those analytical thinking that often leads to definitely outcomes that is not desirable. So intuitive decision making comes down to the fact that we need to know our value hierarchy. Then based on that, you can react based on response based on your value hierarchy, right? And react as a knee-jerk reaction. So what I'm saying is that if intuitively, and again, if even you reflect back in your personal life, when
Yep.
you are new to a domain or industry or even a team or in a different setting, so your reactions are more fight or flight mode kind of things. It's based on the sympathetic nervous system, which is that reactive mode. Adrenaline is pumping basically the muscles, and then your awareness is heightened up to react in form of survival. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're in intuitive decision making process, you're in parasympathetic nervous system, which is more reflective, more understanding and aware of a scenario. You don't see through your own lens alone, you're seeing the whole scenario. That's how I have had a chance to serve and help a lot of clients with their intuitive decision making versus just analytical mind.
Okay. Okay. That does help. That does help. And in what ways does understanding neural processes contribute to better handling of ethical dilemmas in long-term care management, according to you?
Well, I think you know what the ethical. We need to a little bit clarify on that ethical dilemma because I'm going to give you a scenario. I don't know if that helps. If not, then help me to understand the ethical dilemma a little better.
Yep.
It is known to a lot of individuals that the neurons that they fire together, they wire together. Simple
Mm-hmm.
as that.
Yeah.
Is a principle of the neuroscience. The neurons that they fire together, they wire together. So, meaning that if you just understand that basic concept of neuron processing, you understand that, ethically, when you are not able to connect with a subject, there's that, what do you call it? I would say, uh, deep fundamental disconnection with that topic. Like for example, we had a case in one of the homes that we had a POA who was a decision maker for care, and resident CPS I think was 4 or even 5, and then but he want to have like chicken wings,
Okay.
and the POA was made a decision that no, my dad can't have a chicken wings based on his diet. So
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously now that's like ethical dilemma right there. I don't know what kind of ethical dilemma you had in mind asking that question, but again, there are many different ones out there, but that's like right there. And then we had an ethic committee to make a decision. What should we do? Like, if residents is asking for chicken wings, that could be a
Mm-hmm.
choking risk, and the POA say no. Or many other cases that, residents was palliative, but cognitive enough to respond to say the fact, I no longer want to be on a machine. I'm totally fine to basically, using the simple term unplug. And then some
Mm-hmm.
family members are basically, opposed to it, saying to the last breath, let's try. And then some and the
Yeah.
resident is to some degree is suffering from many complex, I would say, underlying illnesses that it is prompting them to make that decision. Those are all ethical dilemma. Would neuroscience help you to make a better decision? I don't think really. I would say practically will come down to that, but is reflective of it. Because again, you have to again trust your gut feeling about your value hierarchy, understanding the mission and vision and values of your company and your organization, knowing the fact that why you're there in the first place. To be honest with you, like, are you there to prolong someone's life at all costs, kind of things, or is it like
Mm-hmm.
the quality of life is more important? Like these are all very complex. So I love to answer that question, but I think we would need a little bit longer, I would say, forum or a panel to dive into one specific, ethical dilemma at a time, and then let's just say take advantage of that neuroscience to see how could that help us. But to be honest with you, when we know how the neuron processing is happening, which is ultimately helping us to make a decision, I think to some degree will help us to have a more precise decision-making process in that ethical dilemma.
And I think ethical dilemma that would be different according to situation and person to person. So it can be very difficult, and it can be obviously, as you said, a very vast topic to discuss on, and obviously it would require a lot more time. I understand that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think the basic of it, as I said, the neurons that they fire together, they wire together. So again, going back to the first question you asked me, like for
Hmm.
example, I would say just knowing that if whoever is biased towards that ethical dilemma shouldn't be part of that committee, for example. Like
Oh,
that's
okay.
just one of the example. Like you could eliminate at least some of those biasness towards those decision making process. Then at least you will have a little bit more um, straightforward committee or team to have a, I would say, more um, goal-oriented decision-making process.
Got that point. Got that. Yeah, biasness needs to be handled in that way. And how can insights from neuroscience help mitigate decision fatigue among leaders managing complex operations across multiple care facilities? Again, this is a very vast topic about it.
Yeah, I love this because as I suggested before we went live, we just had a 2 hour session at Advantage Ontario in Toronto for our healthcare leaders
Hmm.
about neuroscience of decision making.
Okay.
That how does that help our healthcare leaders? When it comes to decision making fatigue, it comes down to the fact that when we're talking about the perception is projection, we dive deep into that. We dive in deep into the neuroscience of that. What does it really mean? Perception is projection, and we have a saying that is very famous. It's all over our platforms. When you check out zenteamlink.com and many other platforms that we have, and any sessions that we have done in many years of doing uh, team building and executive coaching, I
Hmm.
say your perception of me is reflection of you, and my reaction to you is an awareness of me. When
Okay.
we study that and as a group we really discuss it, you understand, every scenario that is prompting us to make a decision is deeply, rooted to our value hierarchy. That's why it's a reflection of me. A scenario that happens. For example, if a staff is complaining about, being um, uh, subject of racism,
Hmm.
it's total different if you personally have experienced that or not, or if
Yeah.
someone says, hey, listen, you know what, there was a sexual abuse or harassment has
Hmm.
happened. It's so different than when if you have ever experienced those things or not, if you're part of an investigation team or not. So what I'm trying to say is that, decision making fatigue comes from the fact that, what does that scenario mean to you?
Hmm.
So what I have always put out there is that, not making a decision is also making a decision, is a decision itself. Not making a decision is a decision itself. So many times what we have noticed is that a lot of directors and executive and healthcare leaders, because again it's a fast responding environment and it's a human to human connection, because what happens, we need to be mindful of the fact that what is our main product and services in healthcare. Typically people will say care, but what is care? So care is the most intangible product and services in the world that is delivered through a vehicle of love. Good luck
Hmm.
keeping that consistent, because
Yeah.
it's such a wide range of, I would say, culture and understanding of what is care. So what I'm saying is that it's a human to human delivering. Look, with all the healthcare, it's one of the toughest workplace in the world for a reason, because again, everything is so subjective, it's so abstract, everything's so I would say up for interpretation. So what I mean by that, not making a decision is a decision, meaning that, not every, I would say, concern requires for you to react to it.
Hmm.
You could hold on to it. Like in neuroscience, we say, you don't have to close every door,
Uh-huh.
because we cannot rush to it. Like, there was a concern, we want to make a decision about it. There was some sort of a complaint, we want to make a decision about it. obviously you follow your policy procedure within a company when it comes to, complaint and concern procedures within your company. But again, a lot of other, I would say, scenarios that it requires only your attention rather than decision making. It's two different
Yep.
things. You don't have to make a decision to give attention. You can really study the scenario, help them make sure they've been heard, and then you have given all the attention, but you don't have to make a decision right away. In different cases, like sometimes when you're a charge nurse, when you're, and again, your RPN or some other decision makers that are on the floor, that's a different story. There's a critical thinking approach to that process that I'm not going to even get into that, but we're talking about the more of a management side of the case. So when it comes to leadership, I would say hold on to your decisions. You don't have to make a decision right away. You don't have to be a decision making machine and be a fast decision maker. You can give your attention to the scenario, but hold on to it. Sometimes in my experience, again, having a chance to serve many different, I would say, long-term care homes and different facilities and different teams, I
Hmm.
learned that, address the fact you received the concern, and you definitely give your attention to it, but you don't have to really make a decision. Let it be for a day or two, even sometimes give a week or two. Sometimes, in my cases at least, they went away. They were
Okay.
all resolved because there was a misunderstanding. There were new evidence that came to life that we didn't even have to worry about it. Like
Got
a lot of times, again, those fatigues comes from the fact that you feel the urge. I gotta really respond to this. I gotta make a decision.
Yeah.
We gotta do something about it. No, you don't have to close every door. You know,
Hmm.
and again, many times, like, if it's like CIS, that the reportable scenarios in long-term care, that you have to file a CIS, absolutely file it. But again, you have protocols to follow. Take your time, see, what other, again, evidence or I would say information is there for you to gather before you can heavily rely on your assumptions. Because when you're reacting to the scenario for making a decision, and then you
Hmm.
don't have all the information, you have to heavily rely on your assumptions. And we have four rules that we always put it out there, that be impeccable with your word in your leadership style. So say what you mean, and then just be very brave to express yourself authentically. Second one is, don't take anything personally, because your interpretational world is your story, not mine. So how you
Okay.
react to what I say is nothing to do with me. It's something to do with you. And the third one is that don't make any assumption, because again, the assumption is a fear-based model, meaning you don't want to ask question. Don't make
Hmm.
assumptions. And the last one, which is really good for long-term care homes, especially frontline staff, always do your best and believe the fact your best time to time, moment to moment is different. Because again, that's the exhaustion in long-term cares. There's never ending job. I remember when I started 20 years ago, long-term care, we used to have like one staff per like 15 residents. Right now, I
Hmm.
think we have one staff per 5 or 6 residents. So it
Yeah.
still there's work to be done. I
Okay.
bet you even if you have one-on-one for every resident, there will be work to be done. So just be
Uh-uh.
mindful of that. Do your best. And a lot of homes are suffering from staff shortage. So do your best. That's more than enough. We'd love to have you at the facility. Just do your best. Of course, following the procedures are good, but again, do your best, whatever that means to you in that very moment. And there will be no misunderstanding, or there will be no, I would say, disappointment there.
Do your best. I think that's a thing for everybody, not for the home care leaders, but anybody who is going through our podcast. Do your best in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and believing the fact your best is different time to time, because we set a guilt trip for ourselves, because we
Hmm.
always evaluate and judge ourselves based on the best case scenario ourselves. But
Uh-huh.
that's what I'm trying to create, a high, what do you call, awareness, that avoid that guilt trip. Your best moment to moment is different. You know,
Yep.
just believe in that very moment you're doing your best, and that best is good enough. And again, if anybody else has any objection to it, that's their judgment about that scenario, and you cannot do anything about it. That's like avoiding creating the guilt, because that's what eats our soul.
Okay. And Huss, can you discuss a little bit about how emotional regulation and cognitive biases influence leadership decisions, as most of the things you did discuss, and what strategies help overcome these challenges?
I think you know what knowing those biases is definitely a lens to look within.
Hmm.
Because again, if my perception of reality is a reflection of me, then definitely my reaction to that reality is an awareness of me. Just
Okay.
knowing what are the biases, knowing, and then you know, we dive deep into this particular topic in our sessions because we have videos and then we educate individuals about those many different type of biases, but unconscious bias is the biggest one. And we said we cannot cure the unconscious bias because it has developed within our human psyche through our lives to protect us, but we can be aware of it. That's the
Hmm.
key. You know what I'm saying? That's the key, that you need to be aware of those unconscious biases in those stereotyping. But coming back to that emotional regulation, what I mean by that is that when you are aware of those unconscious biases, then you will automatically have a better handle of your emotional stability. So but you're not just reacting to scenarios like unconsciously. So you are basically mindful of that event beyond what meets the eyes. That is very important, I would say, in not only again healthcare but in any other workplace scenarios, because at the end of the day, your decision making is a true reflection of how you're interpreting that, what do you call it, that scenario. So again, coming back to your perception and perception question and emotional stability, and any what do you call it, tips that could help us to really navigate through this labyrinth of complex scenarios within the healthcare, I would say we need to slow down in our decision making process. In one of the
Hmm.
videos, we talk about the unconscious bias. We said we cannot cure it, but we can be aware of it. So number one, to be aware of it, slow down your decision making process, because
Okay.
again, that reactive mode that I talk about at the beginning, rather than reflective, to be aware of that response you're offering and you're producing, basically just slow down that decision making process. Because again, at the end of the day, many times new information would help to see through some of those assumptions before you can again be reactive. And again, when you're reactive, you cannot help to become emotional, because at the end of the day you're emotionally invested in that outcome. Does that make sense? Because I'm seeing it
It
again.
does. It
Remember,
does. It does.
we are we are seeing, we are when we have a resident who had just experienced or suffered from like any type of abuse, as a healthcare leader, you cannot help to but that take that personally, because you would tell yourself that I could have prevent that within my decision making optimization or operational optimization or whatever you name it. So those are the guilt traps you need to be avoiding it, because again, you burn yourself out. So I don't know if those tips would help, but definitely slow down your
Definitely.
decision making process. Make sure your value hierarchies, make sure you know your biases, and I would definitely say those few things on its own will help to eliminate some of those, I would say, scenarios that you would take things personally.
No, no, definitely these things definitely would help. And lastly, what practical advice would you give to home care executives striving to harness neuroscience principles for nurturing innovation and fostering resilient teams?
Something that I've always put it out there that I think is a quick biohack to adopt is to stop gossiping.
Uh-huh.
Because we talk about this gossip in any place that we're invited, and then what truly that means is that if you believe, which is again, this is the very principle of neurolinguistic and human psyche when it comes to understanding reality and life, that when you believe that your perception of me is a reflection of you, then when you gossip of me, who do you really gossip about?
Yeah, gossiping about myself, my things, whatever thing is bad
Exactly.
thing coming into my mind.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So you're really judging yourself.
yeah.
So what happens is that when you really gossip, what you do is basically, you judge yourself. And then
Hmm.
when you judge yourself, no matter what, the scenario is, you're going to find yourself guilty.
Yep.
It's always the case. It's always the case. And then when you find yourself guilty, you're going to find a way, a means to, offer or establish a punishment. You think you're doing it to someone else. It could be blocking them on social medias, ignoring them, not say hi to them, or physical violence, whatever you name it. It's a type of it. So when you judge someone, you find them guilty, and then you find a way to punish them. And then any type of punishment is basically a form of rejection. So you're rejecting them. That's why you're doing the punishment. All right.
Yeah.
So if again your perception of me, reflection of you, when you are rejecting someone, who are you really rejecting?
Rejecting myself, my thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this battleground of duality within the human psyche is the termite to your innovation. And that's why you realize a lot of places that they are slow to process, a lot of countries, a lot of companies, that's what it is. They're stuck in there. They're thinking, their basically brain cycle per second output is so slow because they're so bogged down. It's like a computer virus. It slows you down. Like, what is a virus? Virus is the same, a computer virus is the same code that is a code that is written in the same language that was written your computer, your software. All right. So what happens is that it's so identical that you cannot differentiate the difference. So what it does, like for example, this virus is designed to check your C drive 20 times a minute. So of course, and it has no reason. It's like a gossip. So what it does when it checks your C drive 20 times in a minute, it slows down your CPU, the computation per unit. So it slows you down. So that's exactly what happened in gossiping. So when you're mad at someone, that's what we said. We don't make any assumption, to be impeccable with your word, and then don't take anything personally. Walk up to them and say, clarify things. So don't gossip about people is number one and ultimate solution, and a biohack that I would say it will really help with a lot of things. And again, when you start there, when you understand you are not gossiping to be kind. See, that's a thing that is a difference between when scientifically you're looking from the things and from like neuroscience, from morale. Morale said don't gossip to be kind and all of those things, which is good. But I even take it a step further. I would just say you're really rejecting yourself by gossiping. So you don't have to look any further. Just look within. If there's something that bugs you, it's within you. So look within, then address it within, and then once you do that, you become so, I would say, realistic about the scenario, and then you will find the courage to go to talk to that person. So again, we do this in a lot of healthcare settings. We talk about science of gossip, and then how you can avoid it, and then how it has hindered you from being creative and being innovative and progressing, basically. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Don't gossip, because technically you're gossiping with yourself.
No, definitely. If you are thinking first time in that way, that it is kind of a virus, obviously that's affecting my mind only, rather than the other person that I'm gossiping about. Definitely, it does help. Does help. Okay, so thank you, Hoss, for sharing your expertise today. It was lovely talking to you, and it was a very informative session for our listeners too, and hopefully they will enjoy. And to our lovely audience, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Dennis Gill signing off. Thank you, Hoss.
Thanks, Daniel. Take care, my man. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.